Joining us now for more on this is Texas State Representative and former Chief of Staff at HHS under President Trump. He worked with the Coronavirus Task Force as well. Brian Harrison back with us. Representative Harrison, good to have you back on. Just quickly, want to get your reaction to this Louisiana judge saying, no, not so fast. Title 42 has got to stay in place, at least for now.
Oh, good morning, Rob. Always great to be back with you. And yeah, this judge in Louisiana was exactly right. This is a victory for the United States. It's a victory for Texas. Perhaps more importantly, though, it's a victory for the rule of law. You know, the United States, as you know, Rob, is supposed to be a nation of borders, and it's supposed to be a nation of laws. I mean, we know Joe Biden doesn't want us to be a nation of borders. It's one of the few campaign promises he's kept. He campaigned on open borders. He's giving us open borders. But he also apparently doesn't want us to be a nation of laws either, because presidents in this country aren't able to act like kings or dictators. They're supposed to follow the law when it comes to undoing consequential regulations like the Title 42 order that we put in place during the Trump administration. And this judge basically told him, you can't completely disregard the just absolute devastation that undoing Title 42 would do to countless states that are suing you. And so the judge came down and said, no, you got to follow the law. You can't just take this down without going through notice and comment rulemaking, and let the states who are going to be the most impacted have a say here. And look, last month, we had over 230,000 illegal crossings that we know about. That's a record shattering. But by the Biden administration's own math, if Title 42 went away, we were going to have over 500,000 crossings per month that we know about. That's basically the size of a top 10 U.S. city every 2 months. They've been trying to shred Title 42 ever since they came into office. They've been disregarding it for everybody under 18 for over a year and a half now. So it's not even the same Title 42 as was in place. But if they got rid of this was going to unleash a tsunami of illegal immigration like we've never seen.
Yeah, and just to put it into context, because I think people hear about, we've been hearing about the crisis at the southern border now for a year and a half, and I think people are jaded when it comes to some of these numbers. But to your point there, so 234,000 illegal crossings that we know about in April. That's the most we've ever seen in history at the southern border. The previous high was before Joe Biden took office. It was in 2019. We saw 109,000 crossing in 1 month. That was the previous all-time high. So 234 is more than double that, if that puts it into perspective. I want to read you some of the language from this Louisiana judge who claimed the CDC, quote, didn't follow proper rulemaking procedures by seeking comment from the public, and that the CDC didn't adequately consider the financial harm that states would incur by assuming the health care costs of COVID-positive migrants. Doesn't that just seem obvious?
It does seem obvious. I mean, we were leading HHS during the Trump administration. We put Title 42 in place. We had good reason to basis for doing it. The Biden administration does not and hasn't even bothered pretending to have a reasoned basis for taking the order down. And perhaps more importantly, to this judge's point, why he's exactly right, he didn't take into consideration the interests of the states like Texas, where I proudly serve in the legislature. We're the first impacted, we're the most impacted, and he didn't even bother to take our considerations into account. And by the way, one other point of hypocrisy, speaking of my old agency, HHS, you've got one side of HHS, the CDC, now saying, you know what, COVID's no big deal. Let's just throw open the entire southern border to 500,000 illegal immigrants, every month. But the same HHS out of CMS is still requiring tens of millions of Americans to undergo a vaccine for COVID that many don't want and don't need because they're pretending that COVID is such a dire emergency. So the hypocrisy is also a big story.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the White House coronavirus response coordinator, Dr. Jha, yesterday saying that people in crowded places indoors anywhere in the U.S. should now be wearing masks inside. So COVID's clearly still an issue in this country. Let me just ask you, and I'm just curious what you make of this as a politician, but Joe Biden continues to come out with just bad Biden policy, and then it takes courts to overrule him, and then he appeals. He did it with masks on planes. He did it with vaccine mandates. He did it with mask mandates. Now he's going to do it again here with Title 42. Why not just say, hey, it's out of our hands now. A judge ruled against us, and just take the win and walk away? Why appeal this?
Well, you would think, and that's what a responsible president would do. Joe Biden has shown no interest in behaving responsibly. But to my first point about the rule of law, presidents are not dictators and they're not kings in this country. We have legislative branch and we have an executive branch, and we have an executive branch that is constantly having to get shot down and put into its place by the judicial branch. But I would say to my friends and colleagues in the United States Congress, they need to stand up and assert themselves here. There's nothing stopping the Congress from today, right now, passing a bill that would make Title 42 permanent and end the drama between the executive branch and the legislative branch.
Well, there's a whole lot of Democrats in the House that will not let that happen. But you know this better than anybody. We've got midterm elections coming up in 5.5 months, and a lot of these Democrats are going to lose their seats, appeasing the most progressive wing of their party. And it's not going to go well for Democrats. You think Roe v. Wade is going to be the biggest thing voters are worried about in November? It's going to be gas prices, inflation, the price of groceries, things like that. That's what's affecting the American people every single day. Texas State Representative Brian Harrison, great to have you back on. We appreciate you helping us put that into context. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Rob.